Hey guys, welcome to my October TBR. This is such a fun video because I feel like October, and I mean I felt this way with September, but October even more so feels like fall here. We have Thanksgiving here in Canada and just all the fall vibes, and I definitely went that way with my TBR, and I didn't limit myself. I just put on a bunch of books that I'm in the mood for, and we'll see what I actually get to over time. I have a couple books that I'm prioritizing this month. Once again, I'm going to be doing the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge prompt for the month. I'm going to be doing the Buzzwordathon challenge for the month. I'm going to continue with my reading in Agatha Christie each month, even though I'm not actively trying to solve them. And then I have a Patreon pick that I need to pick out of a jar. So those are like my four main things I want to read this month. And then I just found a ton more books that I'm really interested in. Some of these are off of my October or my autumn TBR that I just shared. There's just a variety, so I'm really excited about all of these books. The first book I'm going to share is actually the book I'm going to be reading for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge for October. The prompt is to read a book with the word secret in the title, and originally when I had picked that prompt, I had a few books on my TBR shelf that fulfilled it, but I've slowly read those throughout the year, so I think this is my only book that is on those shelves, or my TBR cart, which is back over there, that has the word secret in it. And I have read it before, but I want to reread it. It's The Secret Lives of Sergeant John Wilson. I just shared this in my autumn TBR, and the creepy, I don't know, situation reminder that this book is based off of some things that we had to do in high school when we read this book. Standing in a ditch reading a poem where a dead body was found, that kind of thing, you know. Yeah, so I just shared about this one. I'm not going to share about it again. You can watch that video if you're interested, but I'm very curious to reread this one and see if I enjoy it more as an adult without being forced to read it. I was definitely that rebellious teenager that if a teacher told me I had to read a book, I just instantly wasn't going to like it. And I do actually remember enjoying the storyline of this one, so I'm curious to see what I think now. And because I like to break my own rules, I'm actually going to be reading 2 Agatha Christie books in October. The first one is Postern of Fate, because this rounds out the 5 books in the Tommy and Tuppence series. So when I read book 4, I would say they were about 50-ish years old, and they've been aging quite a bit in each book. This one, I think, is an original edition. It's got oh, it's a book club edition. It's got a tiny little blurb there. I was curious to know when this one was printed. 1973. So this is an original book club edition from 1973, which is pretty cool. So I don't know anything about this going into it blind. I'm okay with that. I'm sad to see Tommy and Tuppence, the series, wrap up. They've been a lot of fun though, so I'm also happy to read another one of their books. And then the other one is a Poirot book. This is Halloween Party, another one that I'm taking off of my autumn TBR. And I don't know anything about it. I'm assuming it takes place around... Okay, so I'll read the first paragraph on the back here. At a Halloween party, Joyce, a hostile 13-year-old, boasts that she once witnessed a murder. When no one believes her, she storms off home. But within hours, her body is found, still in the house, drowned in an apple-bobbing tub. Okay, interesting. It's been a while since I read a Poirot book. I've been reading a lot of Tommy and Tuppence, and I think before that a Miss Marple, so it's been a while. We'll see where this one goes. And then Kayla from Books and Lala, her Buzzwordathon is a challenge I've been doing this year, and the challenge is animals or creatures or something, and hers all have to do with the word in the title generally, because it's a Buzzwordathon. So I decided to go with The Lion of Mars. This is a middle grade science fiction book. I don't really know anything about it. I thought maybe I would read the first sentence or paragraph or something. Sometimes I feel like you can get more from a book that way than reading the blurb, plus it doesn't give spoilers. Okay, so the first thing here is actually via secure communication. The date is 3/5/2091. So I'm assuming that would be March 5th, 2091, unless this is from the UK, then that would be May 3rd. It's one of those. From CDR Dexter to U.S. Terrestrial Command. So yes, probably American, so probably March. Message, situation report. The surface digicam at the northwest quadrant of the settlement has been destroyed. The pole supporting it was knocked over as well. It is my conclusion that this was done deliberately by a hostile actor. Please advise. So this is from Mars. And chapter 1 is called The Nest. The trip to Mars was the hardest thing they'd ever experienced. That's what the grown-ups said. The small cramped ship, the constant fear of something going wrong, the knowledge that they could never return to Earth. So I read a few like books that have that similar gotta leave Earth vibe lately, and I've really enjoyed the idea behind it. Some of them haven't been executed as well as others, but I've heard good things about this one, so I'm very curious. Okay, and then my like other have to read in October is a Patreon book in this awkward Mother of the Year mug. I mean, I am a mother, but I would never want to just use this mug, so I use it for this. I have a bunch of titles in here that my patrons have written down, and like most of them I have never heard of before, so we'll see what this is and then I'll look it up. Rurini Keshin? I can't even like pronounce this. I will look it up on Goodreads, put the title up here so that you can maybe pronounce it better than I can. Oh, okay, so this is a manga. This is a volume 1. So I feel better about not being able to pronounce it. It has 4.32 stars on Goodreads after having 384 reviews. Oh, 44,000 ratings. So that's pretty good. Packed with action, romance, and historical intrigue, it is one of the most beloved and popular manga series worldwide. Set against the backdrop of the Meiji Restoration, guys, I don't know. It tells the saga of Himuri Keshin, once an assassin of a ferocious power, now a humble Roroni? Yeah, I don't know. A wandering swordsman fighting to protect the honor of those in need. 150 years ago, in Kyoto, amid the flames of revolution, there arose a warrior, an assassin of such ferocious power, he was given the title Hitokuri, Manslayer. With his bloodstained blade, he helped close the turbulent Baku's... Okay, I'm going to stop trying to... The turbulent something period. An end of the reign of the shoguns, slashing open the way toward the progressive Meiji area. Okay, I just like butchered all the pronunciation of all that stuff. I will look it up some, see if my library has it, or else I'll purchase it, or I'll figure out a way to get my hands on it. I'm excited that it's a manga because I have not pulled out a manga yet from the jar. Okay, and then the other thing that I would like to do this month is participate in Victober, but I'm kind of leaving that open. I'm going to be doing some book shopping this week. I would really like to get my hands on another Elizabeth Gaskell book. I would really like to pick up Wives and Daughters. Is that one that... I think that's what that one's called. I read North and South at the beginning of the year, or maybe it was last Victober, and really enjoyed it, and I really want to get my hands on more of her writing. And I kind of just want to leave it open to some classics. I feel like October is the perfect time to read some classics, but I do have 2 here I would like to read. So, and I believe they're both like Victorian era. Honestly, if they're not, I don't really care too much. The Picture of Dorian Gray. This was another one on my autumn TBR. This is a classic that's on my list of classics to read. Very curious to see where I stand on this one. Like, I know quite a bit about it going into it, and I'm not sure I'm really gonna like it, but like, can I appreciate it because it's a classic? We're gonna see. I'm very curious. The other one is Frankenstein. I don't remember when this was originally published, although I do know that Mary Shelley was like 17 when she published it, so that's crazy. This will be a reread for me, but once again, like The Secret Lives of Sergeant John Wilson, I had to read this in university, and I didn't really enjoy it. Well, also because it was a 6-week English class I was taking. It was and we had to read 12 novels, and this was the shortest one. Some of them were really thick. Over that period of 6 weeks. Plus I was working full time. Plus I was newly married. Plus I was starting a photography business. So I didn't retain a lot from the books that I read. I read them all, but I didn't retain a lot. So very curious to reread this one. Okay, next up is The Bullet That Missed. I still technically haven't shared this in a book haul yet, but it came, I think, last week, maybe the week before, shortly after it was released. Just came out in September. And this is the newest Thursday Murder Club book. So far I've listened to the first 2 on audio, and I actually have picked up this one on audio as well, but I saw that the narrator is different. Actually, there's a few narrators for this one, but it's not the same narrator as the first 2. And I really loved her voice. She did a really good job with it, so I'm not sure If I'm gonna read this one physically or if I'm gonna listen to it on audio or if I'm gonna flip back and forth, we'll see. But I want to read this one really soon. Then I would like to finish the Reckoners trilogy. So Calamity is book 3. I read book 1. In August I did a spoilery vlog over on my Patreon. I read book 2 I think in September or end of August, and now we're on to Calamity. So this is a science fiction, like young adult science fiction where there's supervillains kind of story. Definitely not Sanderson's best work, but a fun ride. I've enjoyed the world in the series so far, and they're very fast reads. It doesn't take me very long. Okay, and what would fall be without some L.M. Montgomery? Honestly, I'm so disappointed that she's dead and no longer writing, because I know there's a limited number of her books that I can read, and that makes me very sad. I'm trying to not cruise through them all. At the same time, I really want to cruise through them all. So the first one I want to read is Magic for Marigold. So this one does not have autumn vibes on it. It definitely has like the summer feel. But we just had my Patreon monthly book club last weekend, and this one was raved about. Well, not really raved about. It wasn't like L.M. Montgomery's best work, probably. But it was talked about in a way that I was very intrigued. Our main character here, I'm assuming her name is Marigold. Oh, it's not actually. Oh yeah, okay, maybe. I'm like trying to skim the back. She is apparently very imaginative and therefore very anxious because she sees the possibilities, the terrible side of things that are possible, and it just sounds like a really fitting read for my life right now. Yeah, so I want to read this one. And then this other one was on my TBR a few months ago. I never got to it. So it is Rilla of Ingleside. This is the last book in the Anne series, and I just wasn't really in the mood for it. Plus, I thought this time of year is so good for this. I mean, it is Anne who originally said, I'm so glad I live in a world where there are Octobers, right? I think that's the quote. And I just need to read this last book in October. It feels right. So we're following Rilla, who I think is the youngest daughter. Okay, yeah, it's their youngest daughter, and she's 15. So I'm assuming Anne's not going to be in it much, but I'm still, like, I've been loving the whole series. I think I've given every book 4 or 5 stars. Sometimes I miss Anne for sure, but I still just love the worlds L.M. Montgomery creates, the way she writes. It just makes me feel so energized, and I love it. My next 2 books were on my autumn TBR as well. So Frank Peretti's Illusion. It's been a while since I read a Frank Peretti. I think I read The Oath 2 years ago, and that was a reread from high school. Like, it's been a while since I read it. I loved it just as much then, and I wanted to get to one of his books last year, never did. And this one I've never read. So there is a couple who is a popular magic act. So they've been performing for 40 years. They're tragically separated by a car wreck that claims a woman's life. But while he's mourning her, she shows up present day as the 19-year-old she was in 1970. So this sounds very science fiction-y, but like he always has like a supernatural element as well. So I'm very, very curious. And I feel like lately fairly big books have felt daunting, and this just, he writes atmosphere so well. He reminds me a lot of L.M. Montgomery. The writing like is very different. Like he often explores the dark side of like the supernatural world and what's going on that we can't see. And so it's not like her writing, but I feel like he immerses me in these worlds in the same way that she does. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to read this one. It's gonna be hard to pick what I'm gonna start with this month. The other one that was on my autumn TBR is Recorder. So this is a Christian science fiction, and oh, this reminds me, I have more books at the library that I need to pick up. I might have a whole nother like library TBR coming up. Yeah, and I really enjoy the world of Christian fantasy and science fiction. I like seeing where authors take things, especially when they have a Christian element. And I feel like fantasy, whether authors are Christians or not, so often they're trying to use their own words for what God has done. Like, I think of Narnia and the first book in series order, The Magician's Nephew, and you watch Narnia being created, and it's done in a fantastical way, but it's like C.S. Lewis was trying to tell the creation story in a different world in his own words. And I feel like so much of that is what happens in Christian science fiction and fantasy. Yeah, so I really don't know much about this, and I don't really care to, but it looks fun, so I'm going with that. And then the last one is another reread. I would like to reread the Screwtape Letters. Speaking of C.S. Lewis, I found this annotated edition at the thrift store this year. So this is annotated by, okay, how do you actually say his name? Paul McCusker. Oh, I always thought there was an L in there. McCusker. So I think he does a lot like with Adventures in Odyssey, and I'm trying to think of what the radio show was called. Like Focus on the Family's radio theater. There we go. So we've got like, you know, the regular Screwtape Letters, but then we've got all of his annotations. And I've read the Screwtape Letters a few times through, so I think it will be really interesting this time to read the annotated version. So excited about this. So that's a lot of books. I have been in a reading slump. Actually tonight, which will be yesterday when this goes live, I plan on having reading sprints live on my channel, so obviously now it will be over, so you can't catch the live ones, but I'm also hoping that we talk about some ideas on how to get out of reading slumps, because I've been in one, but my book club on the weekend definitely felt like it was pushing me out of one, but I want to hear some other people's opinions. But having a stack of books like this that I'm so excited for definitely makes me feel like that reading slump is going to be over like right away. So I would love to hear some of the books that you plan on reading in October. What are some, like, I don't know, some that just feel October-y. Anything from, like, you know, Frank Peretti's kind of like creepier supernatural side of October, but also like L.M. Montgomery's like cool, like islandy, just all those kind of vibes. I feel like there's two very different sides that to me both feel like October, so that's a lot of fun. Let me know some of the things you plan on reading this month.